Our next section is about parallel and perpendicular lines. We're going to compare their equations and talk about their graphs. So parallel lines will never intersect. And for that to happen, that means that the slopes need to be the same. So they have the same slope, and their y-intercepts will be different because they will have no points in common. So parallel lines, same slope, different y-intercepts. Perpendicular lines intersect to form right angles. Those lines have slopes that are called opposite reciprocals. That means that they have an opposite sign. So if one line is a positive slope, then the line perpendicular to that would have a negative slope. Also, those slopes would have to be reciprocals, which means if one line had a slope of 2/3, the other would have to have a slope of negative 3/2. So negative being the opposite sign, reciprocal meaning flipped over. And they might have the same y-intercept. They do not have to have the same y-intercept. So we're going to look at, also I'd like to show you just a sketch. So parallel lines would never intersect and would look like that. Perpendicular lines would intersect, and they actually intersect at right angles. So I'm going to use a little right angle symbol there. We're going to look at some equations in example 3 to determine if pairs of lines are parallel, perpendicular, or they have neither relationship. And the first thing that you'll need to do for each one of these equations would be to solve for y. So for the 4x plus 3y equals 8, we'll need to subtract 4x from both sides of the equal sign. And that would leave us with 3y equals negative 4x plus 8. We can divide by 3. Remember, you divide each term. That leaves us with y equals negative 4/3 x plus 8/3. The information you need out of this is m, which is negative 4/3, and b, which is positive 8/3. The second line is already solved for y. We just need the important information out of it. So already solved for y, we have m would equal the number in front of the x, that's 3/4, and your b, which is negative 9/2. Our third one is also solved for y. So we need the slope m, which is 3/4, that's the number in front of x, and b, which is 8/3. And finally, our last one needs to be solved for the y. So we're pretty close. We just have to divide everything by 6. And so that gives us y equals. Now I do want to notice negative 8/6. Although that doesn't divide evenly, we can reduce that. We can take 2 into each one of those numbers. So negative 8 divided by 2 would give me negative 4. 6 divided by 2 would give me 3. So negative 4/3 x plus, we could do the same thing with the 16/6. It doesn't divide evenly, but 16 can divide by 2 and give me 8. 6 can divide by 2 and give me 3. So that way I get my slope m is negative 4/3 and b is 8/3. And now we're going to pair up our lines and decide whether they are related by parallel, by being perpendicular, or neither one of those. I'm starting with line 1 and line 2. I first want to compare the slopes. Line 1 has a slope of negative 4/3. Line 2 has a slope of 3/4. Those slopes are opposite signed, one's negative and one's positive, and they are reciprocals. 4/3 and 3/4 are reciprocals. Opposite reciprocals are perpendicular lines. So these two lines are perpendicular. Okay, then lines 1 and 3. So I want to look at line 1. Its slope is -4/3. Line 3, its slope is 3/4. Again, those two have opposite signs and flipped over. In fact, it's the exact same relationship. Lines 1 and 3 are perpendicular. Then we'll look at our lines 1 and 4. So line 1 and 4. Line 1 has a slope of -4/3. Line 4 has a slope of -4/3. So now it's looking like those two lines are parallel, but we do need to check the y-intercept. So the y-intercept on line 1 is 8/3. The y-intercept on line 4 is also 8/3. And so we actually have, instead of parallel lines, we have the exact same line, which means that they have neither relationship. They are not parallel and they are not related by perpendicular. And finally, we're going to look at lines 2 and lines 3. So line 2 has 3/4 as its slope. Line 3 has 3/4 as its slope. They're the same, so they could be parallel. We need to check the y-intercept. Line 2 has -9/2. Line 3 has 8/3. So the slopes are the same. The y-intercepts are different. These two lines are parallel. You will have a couple of questions on Math Excel where you will need to solve your equations for y and then compare the slopes. And again, you're looking for the slopes to be the same with different y-intercepts for lines to be parallel. Or for lines to be perpendicular, the slopes have to be opposite signed and flipped over.